late this evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sally Dixon, and I'm a program coordinator for the Connections Alumni Network. We're so delighted that you're all joining us this evening for the first broadcast of our season, I guess I could call it, and the first of our 10-part Global Leadership Series. Couple of quick housekeeping items, which I'm sure you're all familiar with from being in meetings like this. Please keep your microphones muted just so everybody can hear the presenters. But feel free, as we're already doing, to throw out comments or questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the broadcast. And at the end of today's webinar, I know you're all going to want to start your weekend, but please stay on for just a minute when they're done, because I'll pop back on and I'll tell you about a few of our upcoming programs. And we're also going to share a very short survey with you, so you can tell us what topics or speakers you're most interested in for the upcoming sessions of this series, so that we make sure you get the information you're seeking, because this is for you. But for now, I will introduce my colleague, Daisy Thomas. Daisy is a strategic visionary who excels at recognizing patterns others miss, particularly in the AI implementation and organizational transformation. With over 25 years of experience bridging technology and human systems, she brings unique insight to the critical patterns that determine success or failure in digital transformation. She has also published over 700 articles demonstrating her ability to recognize and articulate crucial connections across seemingly disparate domains. And Daisy, I know you said I didn't need to share that, but I have published 0 articles, so I find that incredibly impressive, and I have a lot of catching up to do. Thank you. We're going to be adding Daisy's full bio to the connections.network website if you want to read about all of her amazing work. But for now, I am going to turn it over to Daisy.
Thank you, Sally. Hello, everyone. I'm truly honored to welcome you to this first session in our series on global leadership. Today's conversation is about building resilient, adaptable leaders in the digital age, with a special focus on Eurasia, a region rich in culture, innovation, and potential. Whether you're joining from a bustling capital city or a quiet rural area, your presence here matters. Leadership doesn't just happen in boardrooms. It happens wherever people are willing to lead with purpose, whether that's within their teams, their communities, or even their families. I also want to be upfront. While I'm not from Eurasia and neither are our panelists, we come with a deep belief in the power of education, innovation, community, and compassion to create meaningful change. We are here to exchange ideas, share insights from our leadership experiences, and learn with you, from you, and alongside you. So thank you for taking the time to be a part of this conversation. I'm Daisy Thomas, and I'm genuinely excited about what we'll discover and build together today. So let me walk you through what we can expect during the next hour together. Our focus today is on building leadership skills that matter in the digital age, a time when leaders are being asked to adapt faster, collaborate more widely, and solve challenges that cross industries, cultures, and even national borders. We'll explore 3 key areas, starting with what it truly means to lead in a digital world. Digital leadership isn't just about using the latest technology or managing virtual teams. It's about embracing the human side of leadership, how we stay connected and build trust, even when working across time zones and screens. We'll discuss how empathy, adaptability, and data-driven decision-making all come together in successful digital leadership, and share real-world examples that bring these ideas to life. Next, we'll dig into some of the most common challenges leaders face, like resistance to change or the communication gaps that arise when people come from different cultural backgrounds. Whether you've managed a cross-border team or introduced new processes to a familiar group, you've likely encountered pushback at some point. We'll talk about why this happens, and more importantly, share practical strategies for working through it in ways that build buy-in rather than creating fear or hesitation. And finally, we'll talk about resilience and innovation, 2 leadership qualities that are often talked about, but not always easy to foster. Resilience means being prepared for setbacks and responding with purpose, not panic. Innovation, meanwhile, doesn't always mean major breakthroughs. It can be as simple as making thoughtful improvements to processes that already work. Both of these qualities become especially important when you're navigating fast-changing technologies or working with limited resources. Our panelists will share how they've cultivated resilience and sparked innovation in their leadership journeys, And I'll invite you to think about what resilience and innovation could think about in your own context. Throughout our time together, we'll have opportunities for reflection and participation. There will be moments when I'll ask you to share your perspectives, starting with a poll that you'll see very soon. I encourage you to participate, whether that means selecting a response, sharing in the chat, or raising your hand during the Q&A. Leadership is a two-way street, and some of the best insights often come from those who are willing to share their own stories and observations. So as we move through today's conversation, I invite you to be open, reflective, and curious. The purpose of this session isn't to give you a one-size-fits-all formula for leadership. Instead, it's about sparking ideas and finding approaches that resonate with you and your work. By the end of this session, my hope is that you walk away not only with new insights, but with practical steps you can take, whether it's something small, like adjusting how you approach team meetings, or something big, like rethinking your digital transformation strategy. We've got an exciting hour ahead, and I'm truly looking forward to our conversation. Joining me today are some incredible US-based leaders who bring global insights and practical expertise to this conversation. Kevin Koym brings a wealth of entrepreneurial experience in building digital ecosystems and has exceptional vision for expanding partnerships globally, including working closely with organizations that align with diplomacy and education efforts. In his role as Senior Director of Global Partnerships, Will Smith has created meaningful collaborations across regions. His approach is deeply rooted in humility and a commitment to creating lasting educational impact. Their perspectives will help us connect leadership principles rooted in US experiences to real-world challenges that resonate globally. So let's begin by defining what we mean when we talk about leadership in the digital age. On the surface, it's easy to think that digital leadership is simply about adopting the latest tools, whether that's project management software, virtual communication platforms, or data analytics dashboards. And while those tools are important, they're just the starting point. True digital leadership runs much deeper. At its core, digital leadership is about how we adapt, inspire, and stay connected in a world that is ever-changing and increasingly digital. This goes beyond just implementing technology. It's about fostering a culture where innovation thrives, communication stays open, and teams remain united no matter the distance between them. One of the key elements of successful digital leadership is adaptability. The digital world shifts constantly, sometimes overnight. New tools emerge, customer expectations change, and economic pressures force organizations to pivot. A great digital leader isn't rigid. They're flexible enough to navigate uncertainty and guide their team through it. But adaptability doesn't just mean reacting to change, it means anticipating it and preparing for it thoughtfully. It's about building processes and mindsets that allow teams to evolve and without losing focus. Another defining quality of digital leadership is inspiration, how leaders motivate their teams even when they're working remotely or across time zones. In an in-person team setting, building team spirit and camaraderie might involve face-to-face check-in, shared coffee breaks, or informal conversations. But in a digital space, it takes deliberate effort to foster that same sense of belonging and shared purpose. Great leaders in the digital age know how to create moments of connection that strengthen their teams, whether that's through clear communication, team rituals, or celebrating wins big and small. Digital leadership also requires empathy, the ability to understand and consider the feelings, perspectives, and challenges of others. When teams are spread across different regions, cultures, and time zones, empathy becomes even more essential. It's not just about sending an encouraging message, it's about listening actively, checking in regularly, and ensuring that every team member feels supported and valued, even if they're contributing from an ocean away. This also ties into how we approach decision-making. In the digital world, we're surrounded by data, click rates, engagement metrics, feedback forms, sales dashboards, and more. Leaders today are expected to make data-informed decisions that move the organization forward. But being data-driven isn't just about looking at numbers. It's about balancing the data with human insight. Leaders must interpret the data in ways that reflect real-world experiences and understand how their decisions impact the people behind those numbers. Courage also plays a significant role in digital leadership. It takes courage to experiment with new tools and approaches, knowing that not every attempt will succeed. It takes courage to introduce change, knowing that it may be met with resistance. And it takes courage to prioritize well-being and inclusion, even when the pressure to perform is high. Courageous leaders aren't afraid to take calculated risks, and they're not afraid to pause and recalibrate when things don't go as planned. Ultimately, digital leadership is a balance between embracing technology and amplifying the human side of leadership. It's about creating digital ecosystems where people are empowered, not overwhelmed, connected, not isolated, and supported in ways that help them thrive. So, as we open today's conversation, I invite you to reflect on your own leadership style. Think about how you approach change and how you build connections in your own teams, especially when distance, technology, or cultural differences come into play. What does empathy look like in your daily leadership? What data points influence your decisions? And where do you find the courage to lead through uncertainty? With that foundation in mind, let's turn to our panelists for their thoughts on what leadership in the digital age means to them and how they've handled these challenges. Our panelists offer a unique pairing of experiences, one shaped by entrepreneurship and innovation in global ecosystems, the other grounded in cross-regional collaboration and partnership building. Together, they'll help us connect the dots between strategic implementation and long-term resilience. So, guys, I'd like to ask our panelists. Kevin, given your experience leading tech innovation and working to build global partnerships, how do you see digital leadership shifting in the next few years, especially in diplomacy and education?
Thank you for this opportunity to be with everyone. It's exciting to get to work cross culturally and around the world. And one of my favorite things to say is all the world's problems have already been solved. It's just a matter of connecting the entrepreneur, the solution, to the market with a problem. The way I think about this is, some of you have heard the quote that William Gibson, the science fiction writer, he says the following thing. He says that the future's already here. It's just not widely distributed yet. And so my corollary to that is the statement I just made about, all the world's problems have already been solved. It's just a matter of, if you believe William Gibson's statement, then you can start thinking about what might be really possible. The key thing from my perspective is we need to find the entrepreneurs that have the solutions wherever they might be and help them get connected in. I think in the world that's coming, like in this idea that we're talking about, like what's happening shortly in the future, there's all these disruptions that are happening, everything from the introduction of AI and, new technology type of disruptions, as well as there's, extremely significant trade wind shifts, like the, trade lines are changing significantly. And there's all these different questions that, there's a lot of uncertainty about the things that come. The thing that I focus on when we talk about digital leadership is how do we empower more people to be entrepreneurs? Because being a product of this, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years of my life, and I had the good fortune and just by chance that I got to work for an entrepreneur that you might have heard of before, a guy by the name of Steve Jobs, had a company called Next, and I got to be at a startup that I'd never heard about being in startups, and the whole thing about it is this whole thing about how can we discover in the olden words, by the picture behind me, I'm kind of trying to elicit this idea of being a pioneer, and like which the photo kind of alludes to. But that pioneering spirit, whether it's on this side of the world or that side of the world or wherever it might be, for the disruptions that are coming and the uncertainty that are coming, the only way to navigate that, whether we say it in digital leadership, is to be a pioneer. I can talk about that all day long, but so I'll stop for a second and toss it over to Will. But yeah, thank you for this opportunity to be here today with you guys.
Thank you, Kevin. Will, what communication strategies have helped you bridge those cultural divides?
Oh, no, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all. Before I get into it, I'll give you a little bit of information about our organization and specifically what we do. So the Texas International Education Consortium is a consortium of about 60 institutions, 40 Texas institutions, 19 international or 20 international institutions at this time. And we always say for TIEC, we serve as what we call like the Ministry of Education for the state of Texas, and getting them this exposure, or Texas institutions exposure, in the skills and the know-how that our institutions have, exposing that to the rest of the world and vice versa. This whole aspect of access is critical in this. And so when we look at the strategies that we utilize in terms of how we communicate, we're small, nimble nonprofit organization. We have about 12 employees within the organization right now, 70,000 faculty, 500,000 students that we're constantly in communication with. And so we have to be nimble. And then when it comes to communication, there has to be shared vision. And then, of course, access is critical as well. We have institutions that are not as resourceful as others based off of the amount of funding they receive. But as a consortium, we have to ensure that these guys have the same amount of access and the same amount of knowledge and access to information that our larger institutions have as well. And so with something like this, having a shared vision, understanding that from the largest institution to the smallest institution within our consortium, that there's a shared vision of internationalizing their process, their institution, no matter where they are in that process, they want to develop and increase in that area, no matter where they are. And so we work, and so when we talk about these critical areas, shared vision is a key piece, as well as the ability to access. And what we found is that not everyone uses the same communication tools. Some prefer utilizing WhatsApp on more personable levels than hopping in on a Zoom. We've also realized that some might prefer different technologies, right? We're on Zoom now. Some might prefer Microsoft Teams as a way to complete projects. And then, of course, in terms of emails, things get lost sometime in translation. Since we are working across a number of different cultures, the language barriers are always there. So we have to be able to be empathetic. Not everyone speaks the same language. And so when we're doing collaborative projects, whether that be a collaborative project in which we have virtual exchange, where you have someone from Japan collaborating with one of our Texas institutions in the classroom, there's going to be language barriers. And so for us in our organization, in this digital age, it's critical that we communicate the challenges up front and say, hey, these are some of the barriers that we're going to run into, and these are the ways that we're going to overcome them. And then we serve as that middleman, right? That liaison, that when there are complications and it's hard to really translate what's going on, we have to be culturally knowledgeable enough to be able to listen to our partners and then be able to translate that to the international partners or our Texas partners what that problem is. And so there's nothing that gets lost in the translation. And the key piece with that, though, is that shared vision. Once we all understand what the goal is and where we're trying to go, it's easier to resolve a lot of the conflicts that might come with these cross-cultural collaborations and resolve them a lot quicker because we all have this shared vision and goal in mind. And I'll stop there, and we can talk about it a lot more. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Really interesting insights from both of you. So now let's hear from our audience. You'll see a quick poll appear. What digital leadership challenge is most pressing in your context? Please select your response and we'll read out the results in just a moment. We want to hear from you. If you've encountered challenges similar to what Will or Kevin described, drop a quick word or phrase in the chat. Your input enriches this conversation. So just give everyone a moment to do that. Okay, so it's clear some challenges like across managing remote hybrid teams and balancing traditional practices with digital innovation are shared globally, which is, pretty indicative of, it doesn't seem to matter where we are. We are facing the same problems as leaders across the board. But as we approach them, we can understand that these are shaped by the local realities, and that's what we're going to explore further. Sorry. These resonate because they highlight how leadership is both technical and an emotional skill. I'd love to hear from our panelists. How do you address challenges in your work? Well,
Well, do you want to go first?
Oh, I was going to pass it back over to Kevin.
all right, Kevin.
So, question is, how do I handle challenges in our teams? Is that Daisy? That's the question.
Yes.
Um, so by definition, my team is mainly spread between Texas and Mexico, and by definition, we're working on like every day is it's a there's multi-cultures that are actually happening, and our customers are all around the world, and so this is happening all the time. The main thing about it is just starting with the perspective of knowing that one perspective is not necessarily the right or truth. In my case, one of the things I was thinking about, this is going to sound kind of silly, but I'll mention it. My parents got divorced when I was a child. One of the things that I realized, because mom and dad were arguing about all sorts of stuff, and one of the ways that we bring our backgrounds into things, for me, is interesting to kind of discover, because of mom and dad always having different perspectives and so much animosity happening between the two, of just the idea at the most fundamental level that there's more than one approach to what the truth is. It's like, is mom right or is dad right? Neither one. Is my Texas team or my Mexican team, or perhaps, projects we're doing especially when we get multiple cultures, just this understanding that just knowing from the get-go that there's not one necessarily truth there, as we look at information. That perspective alone, I think, is more important than anything else I probably could say. And it's interesting as well to the other thing I mean to imply by that is, as we look at our backgrounds that inform who we are, to also figure out the ways that we can use that as bridging, which is one of the reasons I use that personal story to even mention it.
I appreciate you sharing that. Kevin, you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned you have all these teams across Texas and you try to do making sure that everyone has the right and equitable resources. How do you create trust and cohesion with your digital teams who may never meet face to face?
And that's a good question. And for me, it's laying out the goals and the expectations that we have early on. I think this is critical because a lot of the times you run into situations or conflict when there's no communication, there's no clear communication on what the goals are for this specific role or for this specific project. Right now, we're a hybrid team. So we have about 4 of our members that are completely remote, and then we have 8 members that come in, 2 to 3 days a week into an office. For those 8 members, we typically meet on the first day of the week to go over the projects and the goals that we have. And then for our leaders, for our different leaders in the different areas, we specify what targets we're trying to hit for that week, and then we follow up that Friday to see what the goals are. It's a little bit harder though for these remote teams and for our remote workers. They zoom in. We create platform and access to them to still feel a part of these teams. When we have our in-person meetings, they're there online. We set it up where they feel like they're still a part in that meeting. But with those that are on the remote team, instead of just popping into the office and following up with them, I typically set up meetings 30 minutes at most to follow up on projects that they have. And it's not to say that I'm following up to say, where are you at with the project, but where can I support you? What areas of support do you need? Or are there any updates that you need to make me aware of? Is there any, do you need any assistance, additional help on a certain project? And those 30 minutes, typically 15 minutes toward the project. The other 15 is toward relationship building. And because, as with anything, the stronger you have that bond, that relationship with, the easier the communication goes and the more comfortable they are when there are challenges that you might face. And so that's the way that we structure and work with that team there. And then, of course, with the international teams because we have our direct team, but we're working with different partners all around the world. It's somewhat of the same format, right? If we once we have this vision and we set out a plan, it's continual follow up either through we're utilizing right now the most popular one is WhatsApp or WeChat if we're working with some of our partners in other areas. But we're utilizing that on a consistent basis with the understanding that I know you're not going to get a response to me immediately because you're, sleep right now. And so having that understanding, being able to clearly communicate that, encouraging them to turn off their notifications, when their day is over, so they don't get pinged and wake up in the middle of the night. Those items are really critical to building trust and then setting the standard and setting the tone for how you want the team to operate and execute as well.
Thank you. Kevin, will you mentioned that you have teams in Mexico and Texas, and I'm sure you have teams across the world as well. Can you share a time when cultural differences impacted the project and how you handled that?
I mean, I'll tell you, like, so my core team, like my team members and my corporation are between Texas and Mexico, and we're working with entrepreneurs. Like, I've physically been in 22 different countries in the last 8 years. And so, obviously getting to do a lot of different things. The story that I think is most interesting from that perspective is the one that began at the very beginning of my career. Like my career as an entrepreneur. My first customer was a bank in Mexico, and I had just started a company, and I just kind of learning all the different things. And so I'm 24 years old. I was invited to go to lunch with Mr. Big Man, like my direct manager of the project, my point of contact of my customer, and then there was his boss's boss, a person that's famous in Mexico at the national level. We get to lunch. Lunch starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon versus 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock's typically American lunch. 2 o'clock's typically a Mexican lunch. And for the first hour and a half, or almost 2 hours, the boss, his first name is Ricardo. Ricardo started asking me questions about my family, about where I lived, about all these different things. And we have a couple of things that like this one security trading firm had bought this bank, and my software was integrating the two pieces. The thing that was crazy is I was really worried about this software. And there's a couple of questions that I had determined I have to get answered at this lunch. The funny thing about it is the lunch went on and on and on, and like chorus and chorus and chorus after chorus. And I finally was about to lose it. Well, so the Ricardo ended up going to the restroom, and Marco Cesar Gloria, the gentleman who was my direct contact that had brought me in, he said, "Tranquilo." I'm like, "We got to do this right now." And he's like, "Tranquilo, tranquilo, tranquilo." Tranquilo means, be patient. It's okay. It's okay. What happened that was a total change was, from a cultural perspective, is here I'm trying to get the work done, but actually Marco was telling me what really has been going on is Ricardo's been interviewing you. You just didn't realize it. He wanted to know who you are. How do you comport yourself? How do you manage your family? What do you really care about? What do you stand for? I never would have seen that because I was this young, impetuous entrepreneur. I'd worked for this, really famous startup and all that sort of stuff before that. I'm just want to get the job done. Not totally missing the boat about that. That perspective of that one lunch really opened my eyes because then Ricardo came back. We had tequila as part of the meal. And the way it closed was, after 2.5 hours of just talking about stuff that didn't feel like the project, there was 10 minutes of boom, 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 and everything was done. And including the thing that I couldn't have imagined going to that lunch was some of the doors that have made me a productive entrepreneur now, 30 years later after that story, there's all these doors that got opened up for me that to now that, I've done 30 years of business in Mexico, and it happened at that lunch. I never would have imagined what was going to get opened up for me because of 2 hours of talking about what I thought was nothing, right? I want to get something done. And the Mexican was like, no, tenemos otro. He had other ideas. So
Absolutely.
hopefully that answers your question. I mean, for me, that story kind of really, that moment really cracked my mind open in a way that I'm so fortunate to have had that experience.
Oh, those moments are incredible when a door opens and it suddenly showcases how you think about the world in a different way. It is an incredible way to then operate in a new form. So absolutely, I'm glad that man helped open that door for you.
Thank you.
So Slava in the chat asks, how can we keep up with the lightning fast pace of digital and AI advancements without losing our sanity in the process? What a wonderful, wonderful question.
That's a great question. It's something that we're actually dealing with right now within our organization. So I love this. What I'm realizing, right, is that you don't have to move at the speed of lightning with the advancement of technology. And I say that because when we were looking at a number of I'm blanking on the proper name for it. Things like HubSpot, these CRMs, right? Essentially customer management systems. And we were exploring the best way in which our small niche organization needs to operate with this. And we're exploring different technologies that some are much more advanced. They've embedded AI tools within their systems, and we were looking at those and saying, okay, what do we need for our organization? And there were a few things that we were considering, few programs that we were considering, but we really had to reflect on our current operations. All right, what do we do now? What would we like to do better? And then which tool are we going to utilize that's going to help us do better? There were some that had all the bells and whistles, did things that we didn't even need. And I could see our team, they were attracted to it, but at the same time getting stressed out about it because it's now an entirely new system that you have to learn. And so what we did was we started with new technologies that we have. We started writing out our operations, looking at our SOP that we currently have, and then looking at the vision to say, how can we make things easier? Then we approached those organizations with the questions that aligned with our operations. Instead of them telling us everything it can do, we said, we need to do X, Y, and Z. Show us how your technology can help us achieve this. And it was a lot easier. Now, the introduction of the technology, once we purchase it and once we're moving forward with it, there's a learning curve that's associated with that. And what we've done is we don't just quickly move away from what we're currently doing into the new technology. We go through training on it. And typically what I like to do is have one of our team members, one to two of our team members work with their, whatever technology we purchase, work with their organization to do the training on it. And then I have those one or two team members then translate exactly what's necessary and what functions that we'll need as users of this new technology, and they'll provide training to us. And then once everyone is comfortable with it, and once we're good to go, then we start launching it and providing access, et cetera. And then in terms of AI, it's the same thing, right? Looking at your operation, saying, okay, where can we utilize AI that's going to be beneficial for our organization? A number of our team members were scared, right? They were scared of ChatGPT. They did not want to use it. I said, hey, there's ways in which this can be utilized that will save us a bunch of time, right? So we can focus on the things that truly matter. And so we're slowly moving into that phase of utilizing this and showing that it's not just some scary technology. It's something that can be beneficial to help with our operations, to get us to more of our mission instead of some of these, administrative tasks that might take a long time if we don't use it. And so to answer that question, I say, instead of trying to keep up with the fast pace, make it work for you and see which technology is available, affordable for your organization as well, that fits with your operations and the vision that you would like to see the organization moving toward.
Thank you. Resistance isn't always about fear of technology. It's often a fear of losing stability.
Exactly.
Kevin, how do you foster trust while implementing change?
The main thing that I would say is like a lot of this like even a little bit on even the question Will was just responding to. What I'll try to stand between the two questions. The When there's lots of disruptions, so I come from a disruptive technology background, right? I'm one of the guys who, especially in my 20s, that's what I was like, you know, I was like, here's a tool, and sometimes that can be really negative. And we have a lot of the technology tools that are being used in questionable ways at this point. The only way to really keep up and also to foster, the change is to be connected, right? One of the reasons that I'm so passionate about global connections is, the people that are connected are the ones that are going to transform into the future. The idea is like, I practice a martial art called Aikido. Aikido is not about winning over one person or something like that. It's not like, win lose. It's about cultivating a spirit with each other and working and working and working and working and honing. It's not about beating one person versus the other. It's about, working together, and it's about being connected. I think the same thing happens as we look at, how we are going to navigate the future. The other thing I'd say is, and it's through having that commitment to each other that this sort of stuff really takes off. And sometimes designing and building commitments is different between different cultures, but having that sense from the very get-go that, like, even before we figure all the different pieces out, and how is it that, we can actually have and even start with just a small commitment, and iterate to something that's much larger. That would be what I would say is the first thing is connectivity, and the second thing is cultivating in that connectivity, commitment after commitment after commitment.
Thank you. Innovation hubs like Impact Hub Tbilisi and Hero House Yerevan demonstrate the power of public-private partnerships. These hubs foster economic growth by bridging together ideas, investment, and community. How can leaders in resource-limited regions foster innovation ecosystems without formal hubs? Tech.
Yeah, did you want to go ahead, Daisy? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry. You both are dealing in regions that both have these resource limited issues also that, I think are very relevant to what's happening in other countries. So I think both of you have different perspectives that I think are really important to answer this question.
I can start with Austin. Austin's now in the top 16 most entrepreneurial cities in the world. It's listed. When I graduated with an engineering degree from the University of Texas in Austin, 30 something years ago, um, even though I graduated with honors, I couldn't get a job in Austin. And when you think about in that short period of time, there was a period of time in Austin that it was a terrible place to start a company because there wasn't VCs. It was a terrible place to is like I worked in Silicon Valley, but the truth is that Austin didn't have any of the things, minus one thing. It had a culture of mutual support. I'm going to take care of you. You're going to take care of me. The metaphor that we might use in Texas is I'm a farmer, you're a farmer. I'm going to help you build your barn. You're going to help me build my barn. Or as an example, even say you farm cotton and I farm cotton, and we're both small time farmers. Doesn't that make us competitors? Because you sell what I sell. Shouldn't we be up against each other? Well, the truth is, when you look at that, the guy next to you that has the farm that's selling the exact same thing that you're selling, if he doesn't get the crop, he or she doesn't get the crop out of the field fast enough, like, my small family, your small family, then what happens is the rains come and they destroy the crop. One of the stories that was told to me by my grandfather, my mom's dad, was exactly this about how they would have to work with each other. Now, this whole concept was alien to technology entrepreneurs. I never saw it in Silicon Valley. But part of what we did in Austin was Austin was settled by hippie musicians. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of some of these stories, but like Janis Joplin was here, Willie Nelson, lives close to here. Austin was settled by hippie musicians where people wanted to help each other. The simplest idea that's been the most profound and the most powerful before there's resources, before the governments get involved in anything, is getting entrepreneurs to self-organize, just like I was giving that example of farmers. Just recognizing if we don't do this together, then we're going to be at a loss. Your family and my family are going to work together to get that crop out of the field. And that's what my grandfather and the neighbors around him did. And then when their crops were destroyed 7 years in a row, the only way that small town got through it, I mean, and we're talking about small town, like it's not even a stoplight on the road still today. The only way that group of people got through it is because they worked with each other. That before there's hubs, and even more powerful than having a hub or having an investment in a building is to get entrepreneurs to self-organize in a peer-to-peer kind of way. I'm extremely passionate about that. Austin would not be Austin. It wouldn't be the community you see today without this one paradigm. And it's more powerful than people can imagine.
And community is incredible. And seeing towns like Austin build up and thrive in such a short amount of time has been really fun to watch from the outside. I almost moved there myself a couple of years ago. So kind of kicking myself that I didn't. Regardless, when introducing new technology or processes, setbacks are almost inevitable. Can you share an example of a time you encountered unexpected resistance or a technical issue during rollout? And how did you pivot or adapt? Well,
I'm trying to think of the only thing I can think of right now is we were transitioning our websites, right? And this was a key piece because the website that we had was not necessarily it wasn't the best for engaging in the audience we wanted to really interact with. And so during the transition process, we went through a series of challenges in which some of the links weren't working. Some of the sites weren't fully, developed in terms of the language. And we had to make a decision on whether we pull back the website to ensure that it's ready to go and, post the older one that we hated, but it was functional at least. Or we try to make the adjustments on the fly. And we have a small team. So I want to reemphasize that we couldn't make all those adjustments quickly. We didn't have the resources just to, essentially transition everything immediately. And so we waited. We said, hey, it's not the end of the world. We still have our relationships there. And before we roll something out that's not ready, it's better to wait, get it together, get it designed perfectly, and then launch it. And then this will be the new thing. And so, it was hard, especially on one of our teammates who really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the development of the new website. But they were also grateful that we weren't releasing because we did have a timeline for it. We did have a deadline, said it has to be ready by this, but that's never really the case because the question is why? Why does it have to be ready at this time, right? And there's no answer to that. It's like, yeah, we can wait. And so we decided to pull back and keep our older website until everything was set for the new one. And that did two things, right? It made us we launched an excellent product, and that immediately once it was released, it was good to go, and there was interaction taking place. But then in that human aspect, our team member that really was pouring into this had more time to really develop it and didn't feel rushed. And because of that, we retained them, right? And we were able to continue. And so that's one. I don't think that's like the greatest because there's other technology, but we because we took our time in implementing it, it worked out well. But that's one instance where we had a little bit of challenges there, and we were able to overcome it by taking time and really understanding the purpose of why we're trying to release and understanding the deadlines behind some of the things as well.
Thank you. Yeah, website problems are always an issue for me. So I completely understand those feelings of needing to pull back on that. Let me ask the audience, what's one adaptation or innovation you've introduced recently yourself, whether or not it's worked as a team or for yourself or just success, failures, either one. If you've used a new tech recently, let us know in the chat. That'd be cool. Kevin, have you introduced any new tech or new ways of processing anything in your own operations?
I mean, the new thing is about all I really know how to do. I'm my whole career has been about getting the initiative off the launch pad, like, building the launch pad, getting it off the launch pad, and then pretty much handing it over to someone else. I might joke a little bit about being ADHD in that I kind of like working on the new thing. And
Same.
so I can give you lots and lots and lots of technologies that, both, and being a technology visionary, it's like it is interesting to come up against resistance to, the idea, or we have an expression that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And difficulty with that is that statement by definition kind of assumes that the future that's coming isn't changing, right? And so reminding people about what the disruptions are looking like so that they can possibly see them. It's that's that. I don't know. I don't think I can't tell you that I'm the smoothest on being able to do this, but I do try to advocate strongly for being ready for the future.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay. Well, to wrap up, here are three key takeaways. Leadership in the digital age requires empathy and strategy. Local context matters. What works in one region may need adjustments elsewhere. Resilience and adaptability are built through intentional choices. So to all of our attendees, you'll receive follow-up materials, including the toolkit and case studies. Stay tuned for details on our next session. To our panelists, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. Your stories, reflections, and practical advice have truly enriched this conversation and give us a lot to think about as we continue on living our own leadership experiences. And a heartfelt thank you to each of you in the audience. Your thoughtful engagement, whether you asked a question, responded in the chat, like mentioning all of the Claude AI and ChatGPT, I appreciate all of the answers and the camaraderie that we've been building over the last hour. And if you simply took a moment to quietly reflect on your own leadership style and made this space meaningful to all of us. Leadership isn't just about who holds the microphone, it's about every voice, every perspective, and the willingness to show up, listen, and contribute. One of the beautiful things about conversations like this is how they remind us that leadership is universal in its challenges, but unique in its context. No matter where you live, whether you lead in a classroom, an organization, a team, or your community, the core values of leadership, curiosity, resilience, and empathy are constants. And yet how those values take shape depend on who we are and where we lead. As we close, I'd love for you to take a moment to reflect on something that resonated with you today. Maybe it was a reminder about the importance of building trust within digital teams, or perhaps it was a story from one of our panelists that sparked an idea that can take you back to your work. Kevin, thank you for your forward-thinking approach to digital ecosystems. Will, your emphasis on humility and collaboration gave us a much-needed reminder that impactful leadership begins with listening. Whatever stood out to you, I encourage you to take it one step further, whether that means discussing it with your team, experimenting with a new strategy, or simply giving yourself permission to pause and rethink about how you approach certain moments in your leadership. I also want to acknowledge that leadership, especially in complex, fast-changing times, requires courage. Whether you're working across cultural contexts, embracing new technology, or navigating resource limitations, every decision you make has an impact. And sometimes that impact is seen immediately, other times it unfolds slowly. Either way, the choices you make as leaders ripple outward in ways you may not always see, but can trust are meaningful. Before we end, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Leadership is, at its heart, about connection and growth. It's about finding ways to create and bridges of understanding, especially across differences. It's about helping others see their strengths and stepping forward with a sense of purpose, even when the path ahead is unclear. So as you move forward after today, I hope you'll lead with curiosity, asking questions, seeking feedback, and staying open to new ideas. Lead with courage because progress often starts with a single brave step. And lead with compassion, not only for the people you work with, but for yourself as well. Thank you again for being here, for your time, your energy, and your commitment to learning and leading. I look forward to continuing this journey with all of you. Until next time, take care and keep leading with curiosity, courage, and compassion. Back to you, Sally.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Kevin. That was fantastic. I know I personally got a lot of amazing information out of it that I'm going to start utilizing right away. And I am going to consider my leadership style and ways to improve. Thank you all for attending and for actively participating. If we can have one more minute of your time, I know you want to go start your weekend. So just one more minute. Just want to tell you about our upcoming events. On Monday, this coming Monday, we, and by we, I mean this amazing Daisy, will be hosting our first digital skills for the network age. This is a certifiable digital skills training course. So after the 8 weeks, you get a certificate that you completed the course. It will equip participants with essential digital literacy and prep you for the more intensive cybersecurity education course that begins in March. And you can read more about it or you can register on connections.network. And you can see all of our other courses. And as far as this course is concerned, the global leadership, this continues each month with our next session on February 7th. We would love to see you all there again. And I'm about to put up a poll. It's a quick poll. It's just a few questions, but it's going to ask you some what you want to see in upcoming sessions, speakers you might want, and so if you just take a minute to complete the poll and let us know what we can do for you and what information you need, that would be a great help to us. And otherwise, please I'm going to throw that up right now. In the meantime, thank you all for attending. Have a wonderful weekend, and we really look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye.